everyone who partook?
Partook? I don't know. Yeah, we had to restart this because I did not know how to use partake in past tense. So we're just gonna
Yep.
throw that out the window altogether. Welcome to
Yep.
Something Positive for Positive People. I'm Courtney Brain. Something Positive for Positive People is a 501c3 nonprofit organization connecting people navigating STI stigma to mental health resources. One of those mental health resources is group therapy. We just had our first 12 session cohort of 12 people over the past 3 months, and it came to an end. And I reached out to everyone who took part in it for their exit interview, and some people were a little bit nervous about being recorded on the podcast. So I just kind of did a phone interview with them and took some notes. But then we got the people who wanted to do the podcast, and that's what brings us Jennifer. Jennifer, how you feeling?
I'm doing well, Courtney. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's really useful to take what is going on in the healing process, especially with the things that we're trying to create and get people to get behind and support here at Something Positive for Positive People. For you to be able to bring your story and experience here and put it on display for other people to see what's going on, rather than me just making posts and sharing screenshots and things. I think that hearing from people directly benefiting from the services is something that'll be a lot more powerful. So, do you want to begin with just sharing your experience with the group therapy? Just share whatever it is that you want to share, and we'll go from there.
Sure. I came into the group with not necessarily a group list of expectations, but I just definitely came in it with an open mind to connect to others who had shared, STA status. I think a big part about herpes diagnosis that I see just everywhere is how alone people feel, how disconnected they feel from their status or from other people. They feel like they're the only person in their life that they know with herpes. And so coming into the 12-week program, I was really looking just to feel like I wasn't alone, and that's exactly what I got. I think it was the perfect amount of time. The therapist chosen was incredible. Everybody was, I think, respectful and wanted the same things, and we kind of built this kind of cool little start of like friendships. And I would say after the 12 weeks and then kind of coming out of it, everyone was sad. We had gotten used to seeing each other once a week, and we were from all over. Literally, there was not one person from the same state. There was even people from Canada. I mean, it was like all over, which just shows the breadth of that. Herpes touches everywhere. It really does. It's in every state. It's every gender, every race, every creed, everything, every age. It was really, it was a very eye-opening, it was a wonderful experience for me.
Yeah. And what would you say were a couple of things that you got out of this that you hadn't gotten in other forms of support that you've received?
Yeah, it was really good for me to get to connect with people, newly diagnosed, and then we had people who had been diagnosed for 10 plus years. And that was awesome to kind of see different people's experiencing navigating, sexual health discussions with future partners. I think in the middle kind of our 12-week therapy sessions, we even decided to write what we would like our disclosure, statements to be to partners, or, things like that, practicing some like skills, and then just, some other basic mental health ways that we can protect ourselves, herpes triggers, things like that. And, it was a very kind of a holistic feel. The therapist let us kind of drive a lot of each week. She came with some good foundation, but, we kind of just decided where we wanted to go. It was really great.
Yeah. Did you participate in any other types of support groups? I just asked that last question, like very presumptuous that you've been in others.
Sorry, no, this is my first one.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I hope that I set the bar pretty high for you.
I mean, absolutely. My background is in mental health. I'm a licensed master social worker myself. So, I'm a huge proponent for mental health services in general. And I don't think that this particular need is so great. And I know from my standpoint, and I think from everyone in the group was like, this was such a beneficial thing for all of us to be a part of, because it really just connected us and made us feel not so alone.
Yeah. I think that I've given off the impression that this is herpes therapy, and I'm curious to know if that was what your expectation was going into it, after seeing that I was talking about doing this and advertising it. What were your expectations, and were they met?
Um, my expectations were exactly, I think, what happened. I can say that maybe a little bit more eloquently. I kind of came in with an open mind, meaning I didn't know exactly what to expect, but mostly what I was looking for was just really sheer connection of people who had the same experience as me and then could just share their experiences. So I was a little bit maybe more open to kind of what that would look like each week. I was much more interested in hearing personal stories, and what people were doing in their lives or not doing in their lives, or, kind of, I guess, maybe more of those real life lived experiences. That's what I was really looking for, that connection, that one-on-one personal connection. So the structure we had each week, building on, different themes. And like I said, then having that disclosure, writing, and that was really helpful, unexpectedly, but really wonderful. And so, yes, my expectations were also more than met.
Good. So just to get an idea of where you're coming from, do you mind sharing your diagnosis story?
Oh, sure. So I was diagnosed almost 5 years ago now, and I was in a seemingly monogamous relationship, but my partner and I were having trouble at the time, so we were kind of sort of like breaking up, not together. Anyway, the lines weren't blurred for me. I was not sleeping with anyone else. Unfortunately, he was sleeping with other people and brought home an STI. And so I started to have symptoms and absolutely went to my gynecologist and said, there's absolutely no way that this is an STI. I was like, well, I'm not sleeping with anyone. I only have one partner. And I mean, she was like, okay, this looks like herpes. And I said, I don't think that that's what that is. And then, I mean, I'm serious. I had the absolute 100%. I was like, there's no way. And it also, again, I know a big theme in what you've talked about lately is how herpes doesn't always look the way we were taught. The way I was taught herpes looked, that is not how my herpes looked. It was absolutely not these sores or whatnot. It was it looked like a little cut, and then I got my the results back, and it was positive for HSV2, and my life absolutely crumbled down. I mean, I'm giggling now because I do feel like I've come so far this past year, and I mean, I will say this: the 12-week herpes course was key to my mental health in this, but it was really bad. I was devastated. I genuinely thought my life was over. I contemplated suicide. I mean, I ran the gamut. I really did. And my partner and I stayed together, and I blamed him forever, but it wasn't really. I've gotten to a place now where there's really no blame to be had, right? STIs are a part of being sexual. If you don't get one, then you don't get one, but the likelihood is you're going to get an STI if you are sexually active, right? Breaking the stigma is about just being realistic about what it means. I'm not dirty. I'm not bad. She or he isn't dirty, or they aren't dirty if they get an STI. It's just a price sometimes of having sexual intercourse.
The price of admission.
It is the price of admission, absolutely. And so, I am learning how to manage it. I mean, I definitely can say that I did not feel this way prior to the herpes support group. I didn't. But the more and more we talked about it, the more and more I realized it just is what it is. It's taking a lot of the pain, and it's just also taking a lot of the fact that I can't change anything. There's nothing I can do to change it. This is my life now. So do I want to live it happily, or do I want to continue to be miserable? I mean, it's in my hands.
Yeah. What were some of the first things that you did after you received your diagnosis? Had you talked to your partner?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, it wasn't really a talk. It was more of, a lot of screaming and fighting, and I was, crying, and I thought my life was over, and, and I had literally just started grad school like 2 weeks before. So it was just such a very, very stressful time. So he didn't have any symptoms at first, and then he got symptoms right after me. So, we're now both HSV positive, HSV2 positive. I took daily medicine, daily antiretrovirals for pretty much almost this whole time I've had it, because I had recurrent outbreaks. I've really struggled with keeping those under wraps. I think I'm very stress. My outbreaks are very stress induced. And then also food and things like that. I'm pretty sensitive. So I'm kind of trying to learn how to navigate what works best for me, because I'd like to eventually get off medication. But that's kind of where I've been on my journey. And I think it also was harder for me to feel like I could move forward after my diagnosis, because I kept having outbreaks. So it was like it kept reminding me of this thing that, even when I was doing a little bit of research and reading, there were people like, oh, it's not a big deal. Everything was like, oh, it's not a big deal. Even my provider, it's not a big deal. I'm like, wow, it really feels like an effing big deal to me, okay? It feels life crashing down. That's how it feels. Mm-hmm. So.
Did you end up staying with your partner after?
I did, and then we broke up for a couple of years, and we have actually since gotten back together. So. Through therapy and a lot of other things. So, And that's a very, 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 very recent, like within the last few months.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
literally,
I'm curious about that, because a lot of what's broadcast on social media is they're your ex for a reason, don't get back together. And you and I've had a significant amount of rapport over the last few years. I want to say at least the last a year and a half, maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm more so curious about your decision making around the relationship, and that, y'all broke up, you were cheated on. How do you go from being cheated on and being disrespected in a relationship, having whatever time apart, and then getting back together? Is it like you recognize, all right, well, he wasn't perfect, neither was I. What led you to coming back together after, especially so many years?
Sure, and I am living proof that everybody's story is their own story, and prior to this relationship, I had never stayed with someone who, cheated on me or whatnot. I've never actually been cheated on that I've known of, so I can't say that I really even know how to best answer that question, other than I know for me that I'm also a very damaged person. I'm not perfect. I think that we all come from different places where we need different things, and I think cheating is one of those things in a relationship that have lots of reasons that aren't necessarily about the other person. And so cheating isn't necessarily about me. It's about what this person is lacking or what they need or whatnot. And I do think that people can change. I mean, that's my story and what's good for me. And I'm absolutely not saying that that's what anyone should do. I think there are lots of people that are like, absolutely not. That's my line. Nope. If it's going to happen once, it's going to happen again. And that's perfectly fine. I said that for years. I tried that for years, and that just didn't work out for me. I feel like this person is my partner. And I think that for us in the future, if non-monogamy is something that we look forward to, then it is. I think, he and I have gone around and around, and we've decided what's best for us. Or I've decided what's best for me, I guess, really. Because it was really it's been all in my court this whole time, how I wanted to do this. So I feel like for me, this is the right choice. I kind of skated around that. I don't feel like I really answered your question very well.
So Sorry. It wasn't about how you answered the question. It was more so about, were you going to say things that indicated that this was about the herpes? Like, it's just easier. Yeah, I wanted to ask that without asking it to see what your answer would be.
Okay, yeah. No, and interestingly enough, in the beginning, I will say that my first knee-jerk reaction was, I have to stay with him because of herpes. It really was. But then I broke up with him. And we went our separate ways. I actually was in a completely different relationship for 6 months. And I was and I was completely accepted. I disclosed. It was the scariest moment of my life. But I was 100% accepted, loved, carried out a relationship, and then I just wasn't happy. I missed him. I realized he's the love of my life. I don't know what that means. But for me, that's how that worked. And so we then tried to build something. It took a whole other year, though. I mean, not even, it took more than a year. Through therapy for him, therapy for me. We've been split up, and now it's like we're trying to build something together, and we'll see if it works.
That is so beautiful.
Well, thank you. I will never say that traditional has ever been my bag, and I will also say that I think that if there's 2 people, 3 people, however many people, it doesn't matter, right? Whatever is good for the couple or for the people that are wanting to do what they're wanting to do, right, in a relationship of whatever kind, as long as there's communication, trust, and we're building stuff like that, then that's all you can do. And I do think people can grow up. He was very, very young. I know that's not an excuse, but I find that, the maturity has started to pick up. So that's always a plus.
How does the relationship look different now compared to before? Like what's changed? Have you decided, what it is that you need from him that he's able to give? I guess I'm more curious about how to support others who may be listening to this in navigating whether or not they want to get back with an ex or if that's the right thing for them.
Absolutely. I would say for me and our story, having someone who was completely accepting of, where we were, meaning there was a lot of blaming I did. I guess you could say in the beginning I was really angry. I kind of, would have moments where I would, blame him. I can't believe you did this to me. You took, my freedom away. You did this, you did that, you did that. He kind of was like, okay, I did. I'm sorry. It was very apologetic. And of course, just beating someone up constantly was where we just both were like, this is not healthy. We're not really doing anything. And again, that's why we split up and why we just stopped speaking and we went our separate ways. And kind of coming back together, I see someone who is not personally affected by the things I'm saying and always constantly needing to be beat up. Whereas like before, he felt like he deserved that punishment and then I was punishing. It's more of, hey, listen, if we're moving forward, we're moving forward. This needs to go away. This is what it is. And I kind of felt that, I guess what I call like growing up. I don't really know a better word for it. I feel like he was kind of taking ownership of his feelings. And because of that, I could then really be responsible for what I was bringing to the table and versus just acting like a victim constantly. So I would say, and then the honesty piece is a big one. And it's really honestly just trial and error. I came down to the fact that my heart kept being pulled toward him. I kept feeling like, I want to be back in this relationship. So if I have to do that, I have to give us a real chance. I can't be living in the past. That's gone. We're here. So this is what we're doing. So we're moving forward. And that's it. And then I told myself, he's either going to cheat on me again or he's not. That's pretty much where we're at. Yeah. If he cheats on me again, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, just like he could die in a car crash. I could wake up one day and fall in love with someone else. Like there's 1,000 scenarios that can happen.
Yeah.
And so I can live in this perpetual space of what if, or I could just be present today. And it really, really is about presencing myself for me and being like, where are we at? So, sorry, I got a little sidetracked from your question. The honesty piece has been big. Him actually telling me things to follow through, those kinds of things. And it's just day to day, every day.
You mentioned if non-monogamy is in the picture somewhere later down the line, ... I was curious because I feel compelled to ask you this. Is non-monogamy a proposed cure for cheating?
I don't think so at all. I don't think in our textbook it is either at all. I think it was more of, I'm almost 10 years older than him. And so I think that there's sometimes a sheer sex drive difference. So for me, if it was something that like I just wasn't wanting to do, then why, and if why break up if like a person can get a sexual need met when that's all that it is, those kinds of things. I just think that there's a lot of I just think there's a lot of conversations that can be had in even monogamous relationships for people, as long as there's 100% trust and everybody's on board and those kinds of things. If one partner needs something that I'm not able to give, then and they can get it elsewhere, but yet they're 90% happy, it's like, why break up something good? For those kinds of things. So.
Yeah. I was just making sure because it seemed like an incomplete thought, and I was like,
oh no. I mean, I definitely don't think it is. If anything, I think it's kind of it's the opposite, because all it does is really, it's almost like gives fuel to bad behavior. If like, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're in a relationship and the person is like a cheater and then they suggest non-monogamy, that's just giving them an excuse for their bad behavior versus like actually being respectful to all parties involved, including themselves and things of that nature. So
So what was the reason y'all broke up before?
I think, like I said, it had just gotten toxic. It felt very toxic. We just were arguing all the time. I felt resentful. I felt unhappy. He was like, I'm tired of this going like this. So we split. I thought I needed to be with someone else. I thought, there's no way I'm going to be happy with this person who cheated on me and all those kinds of things. And then that turned out to not be the case for me.
So now, is the behavior that ended the relationship last time a deal breaker for this relationship now?
Yes, we did kind of set very, very clear boundaries. I said, this is kind of it, I guess you could say. If these same behaviors happen, for me, I don't see how we could ever move forward again. It's either the behavior has changed or it's not.
Yeah. And I have a question in regards to, I guess this is my own general curiosity here of therapy. So you're both in therapy. Is it couples therapy, or is he in therapy and you're in therapy?
So he was in therapy because he was working on the road. I'm in individual therapy. He's moving back to the Dallas area where I live, and we're going to start couples therapy.
Okay.
So, yes.
So I've always felt weird about that. I'm like, if I need to be in therapy with someone like so soon in the relationship, is this a relationship that we need to be in? Like, are we making an effort to mold ourselves to fit one another? Whereas I could just meet someone I'm more compatible with, and the therapist, if we choose to go that route, would be something like later down the road as assurance of, things are great now, but what happens when things are not great? Whereas here it seems like, hey, things haven't been great, so how can we make them great? Does that make sense?
It does. And, so he and I, we've been doing this for 7 years. So we have a lot of history. And, therapy for me and for him, where I feel like it's a neutral ground where we can both come, someone who doesn't know us, someone who doesn't have vested interest in either of us, and can really just kind of give us tools. I think for he and I, a struggle we've had is our communication styles are very different. So like, I'm a talker, he's not. I think that's common for a lot of people. So just like little things like that, I think we're looking for tools to like make us stronger, so that I think some of those other problems that we had in the beginning, lack of communication, unwillingness to like, where do we go from here? Those kinds of things. I think that's what we're looking for through therapy. And I do think that having the trauma that we've had, the sexual trauma in particular, I think those are things that can be healed in therapy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For us.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate all of your vulnerability here in diving into the aspects of the relationship as well. So I guess like being in a relationship after going through the group therapy, I guess what did you take away that can be applied to this relationship specifically?
Let's see. So, a lot of the stuff that we talked about, a lot of the people in our group, had lots of different varying needs and questions. And I know for me, I was going through therapy. I had just started a new therapy, individual therapy, at the same time as this group therapy. So it was like bombardment of information. I would say more than anything for me, what the group therapy provided me was a reminder of what I was like, what I'm bringing to the table in general. This inability to let go of the past, clutching really to ideas that weren't serving me, blaming and, being angry again over circumstances that aren't going to change. And I think also, too, a lot of it was I beat myself up because I was still in love with this person that I shouldn't be in love with. And like, I've really had to come to terms with that, is that just because these things happened, I don't think it never changed how I felt. I don't know what that means. I don't know, again, if it might speak to someone, but I never felt like it was speaking to my low self-esteem or anything like that. It really wasn't. If anything, it was just, I think that we are all people who can mess up, and that doesn't make us any less worth loving or being loved or, moving forward or whatnot. And so I kind of got a lot of acceptance in myself and in my choices and moving forward, and just really taking a hold of my life and doing what the fuck I want with it.
What I'm hearing in all of that is self-forgiveness.
Oh boy, and I'm so glad you said that, because that was actually something I brought to the group. I think like 4 or 5 weeks in, I just had a really profound moment. And I wrote this kind of message, and I wrote it in my notes on my phone, and I read it in the group. And it was all about forgiveness. And I said, the greatest gift that one can give to themselves, to others, is forgiveness. Because then it frees you. It's not only forgiveness for yourself, but for others. Because all that's left after forgiveness is all of this beautiful space. All of this beautiful room to just exist without questions or needs or anything. It was very, very powerful.
Yeah. So in your experience that led to you writing that in your notes, what was that? Like, what was happening? Was this like a shower thought or what?
It was, interestingly enough, it was the span. It was, my relationship. It was my father. It was my mother. It was also a friendship, a long time friendship that I kind of let go of. And ironically, first or second week of group therapy, I had this really profound moment where I realized, because we were talking about disclosure stories that had been painful, and I was like, oh, I don't have any. Because I was thinking about my sexual experience with the person that I, partnered up with, who completely accepted me. And then I realized, oh, no, wait, I've been judged, treated poorly by someone who was the closest to me, who continually basically rejected me and my STI status, and was a huge source of pain that I kind of uncovered. And then I've now moved forward with kind of letting go this thing that I was just clutching onto that was really, really holding me back and not serving me at all.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I'm really happy for you. This is great.
Me too. I'm very happy. Very happy.
And you said that you were in that dark place in the beginning of your diagnosis. You said you had even contemplated suicide. Can you walk me through that a little bit of why? Like, why suicide?
It's such a, being in the group and listening to other people's stories, it was just such a similar dialogue. I heard the same thoughts from so many people. It's like, for me, I guess I just did not realize how much knowledge I didn't have about actual sexual health. I was raised in a place in Texas where we got zero actual sexual education. We were told, sex leads to babies and sex leads to diseases, and here's a bunch of pictures, and don't have sex and abstain, and Jesus and God, and that's it. And it was like, if you do these things, you will get this, and you are bad, and you're disgusting, and you're ruined for life. And I think there is a greater kind of pressure put on women. I think women kind of have this greater pressure to not be dirty, and if you do anything, then you're dirty, and there's all these weird social stigma attached to it, I think. And so then I get this I just can remember being in my 20s, and it was like, don't get herpes, it was just like really, really ingrained in my head, and I felt so proud of myself. And I'm putting that in air quotes because, I mean, what is that really to be proud of? I was so proud that I made it through my 30s, and I made it, I made it to my 30s, and I, escaped the herpes, I thought, and then, not wrong.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, so, anyway, my world came crashing down. I guess you could say this little bubble that I had created for myself about what it meant to have or not have an STI. I just absolutely had no real knowledge whatsoever about what it meant, what it looked like, I felt like I didn't know anyone. I never knew anyone. I never heard of anyone. The few people that I did hear, they were, these seedy characters who lived some kind of really, different life than I did. I mean, it was, and it was always in a very poor, negative fashion that these people were talked about. And I was always in my head like, I'm just glad it's not me. And that's awful, just awful now that I think about it. So I think I went through the gamut, this is it. I'll never be able to have sex with anyone again. No one will ever want me. I'm undesirable. I'm disgusting, all of those kinds of things. And I'm pretty good at self-deprecating. I've been doing it to myself for as long as I can remember. So this was just another thing to add, I guess you could say, to the list of complaints I had about myself. And so it just, and then of course I had lots of outbreaks, and that just did not help me at all. I wasn't like one outbreak and then nothing. I was like burp, 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 just back to back to back to back to back. Mm-hmm. And unless I was taking daily medicine, I was having an outbreak. And so it was very, very hard for me. Very hard for my mental health. It was tough.
Yeah. So is there anything that you want to say about group, whether positive or negative, or what could be done different or better? Because y'all are legitimately setting the stage for how this looks moving forward. There may be multiple versions of this running at one time. There could be more therapists. There might be smaller groups, larger groups. Y'all literally are setting the stage for this, so all of your feedback is what's going to be taken into consideration.
Awesome. Well, personally, I loved the group size. I think we had like 12. I thought that was great. I also personally think a little more would be maybe like 15, but I know that with a 1 hour each time, that gave us at least enough time to everyone kind of talk. If we were asking questions, things like that, I think that was still a manageable amount of people. Smaller, of course, would be better. But I don't necessarily know if I would like smaller. I enjoyed that there were more people, more experiences to share, more stories to hear, more lives lived with experiences lived. I think it was facilitated in a wonderful way. The therapist we had was amazing. I thought it felt very natural, very holistic. It moved in a way that felt natural. And so personally for me, I enjoy that. I could see maybe if you wanted to make other groups or like fashions of groups, I could see people maybe wanting more like intense, maybe treatment options or something like that, looking if they're like, really in bad headspaces, things like that. Maybe wanting more intense. I felt like this was kind of light, which I enjoyed. I thought that was nice. But I could see something like that. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, personally, I thought it was spectacular.
Many of the people who reach out to me who want or who will be in group therapy are, I'll say that they're more of like kind of where you are. Everyone was very like, I guess this is bothering me. Maybe let me just reach out for something different. Anyone who might be suicidal, who's super duper depressed, this doesn't appeal to them. They want something different. They want something else. They may want, and anyone who's suicidal, like I have to encourage to call the Suicide Lifeline, because therapists that I work with don't work with people who are suicidal right then and there. I think it's a liability or something. Now that you've gone through the 12 weeks of group therapy, what do you need now?
I'd love to, keep in contact with the people who are in a group if they were interested in that, or, do another group. Personally, I would love to do another one. I could see myself being a part of this, even just for the connection of other people, letting them know, my story, things like that. I think a lot of the people in the group, that was a shared value. Everybody was just so happy to connect with others, that kind of thing. So I think hearing other stories is encouraging. Seeing people beginning in their journey, we had newly diagnosed people. I'm talking, first 6 months, to 10 years. So hearing that progression, seeing the progression that it does get better, that it will, get easier, or, just trial and error, stuff like that. People would bring in disclosure stories every week. Oh my gosh, you guys, I had this win. I disclosed and it was so awesome. You guys, I had this, disclosure and it went terribly. Or you guys, that was just exciting. Even if it isn't for you to be a part of others, navigating this space, this paradigm shift that we're in. We're changing. Courtney, you are changing the landscape, for people with this very manageable STI that have been just kind of forgotten. I mean, we've been pushed aside or whatnot, or I guess, providers just haven't taken it seriously enough. And so, you're doing such a service to everyone. So I would love to be a part of it in any way.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And like I said, your feedback, everyone's feedback who's gone through this is going to be what leads the direction of something positive for positive people therapy moving forward. I offered to, if anyone wants to stay connected, add everyone who goes through group therapy to a Facebook group. It's just a Something Positive for Positive People podcast community. I guess that's what that can be. There's probably 60 people in there, and I'm the most active person. I go in and I'm trying to get combos started, and you'll just see if you scroll through, it's just me posting, and you'll see one like. But perhaps getting some liveliness in there. You've already built community with one another to be able to get you all into that space and add people to it. Perhaps that'll be enough of a community for people to stay in touch after having gone through the session. So that's something that I'll keep opened up for everybody.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. Anything else you want to leave us with before I let you go?
I can't think of anything. No.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. And you all heard it here. You hear how Something Positive for Positive People group therapy is going. It's been initiated. It's going to be a thing continuously. And hopefully people are able to get to a point of self-forgiveness with themselves out of this, be able to set boundaries, be able to disclose. And our overall goal at Something Positive for Positive People is to integrate this kind of a resource with STD prevention efforts. It's as simple as that. So if people are diagnosed and then presented with this as an opportunity to be able to get into group therapy, then we may have a society that is a lot more understanding and empathetic of STI stigma, not just herpes, but if we're empowering people who are newly diagnosed to be able to go off into the world and disclose soon after because they've gone through a process of healing in a safer space that's facilitated by a licensed mental health care professional, then we changing the game, y'all. We changing it. So y'all can donate to Something Positive for Positive People by visiting www.spfpp.org. That's the acronym, Something Positive for Positive People. And you know what your money is going towards. You're hearing the episodes here. So thank you in advance, and thank you in hindsight for everyone who's participated and supported us, however you feel comfortable doing. Till next time, stay sex positive.